Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.
But it was a real immediate impact on my soul and the work that these individuals do.
Yeah.
And the things that they may be called upon to do.
This episode of Bring Back the Porch brought to you by Bernie Leahy, River Street Realty. Let's get you home.
So I'm here with Scott Hanelt, and he works for the fire service here in Medicine Hat. And you're not quite an on-duty regular firefighter, right?
Well, we have different segments in the department. We have our suppression branch, we have our logistics and training branch, and then we have our community safety branch, which I head up. That safety branch consists of inspectors, investigators, public educators.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been in the fire service?
September of last year was 35 years, so 35 and counting.
35 and counting?
Almost 35 and a half.
Okay, so if we go back, what made you decide to become a firefighter?
Well, as a young kid, I mean, it's probably, you hear it from a lot of young kids, like, things that they want to do when they grow up.
Yeah.
Couple of the things I've always thought about, even as a teenager, was, I thought firefighting or police work would be something I'd be interested in. But back then I was pursuing hockey. I was trying to, be the hockey player, and every hockey player has the hopes and dreams and aspirations of playing somewhere and doing something along those lines. When that reality sunk home that I wasn't going to continue with my hockey career, in junior, I did play 1 year of college hockey, took some courses at the Medicine College, and in that summer, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to go. I had some offers from Nate to go play hockey up there, so I was looking at some curriculum that I would be interested in. And funny enough, fire department job posting came open in the Medicine newspaper. I looked at it, thought about it, applied, and rest is history. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be selected on that position. There was 5 of us hired at that time, and we were all given letters as to what position in order that we would be hired in, and mine was the second overall, so I just had to wait till that opportunity, that time came. So there was some months that I needed to kind of fill, so I was able to find a job at the hospital, working in laundry, so I did that for about 10 months until my start date within the fire department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And do you remember going back, do you remember your first call?
I remember, I do. I remember being in September 25th, 1990 was my start date. I remember sitting around, well, not sitting, but following the members on their daily chores, when right in front of the fire station on Maple Avenue, the old Station 1, a little old lady crossing the street got hit by a car. And I got to see firsthand, within the hour of my first shift, the firefighters work and try and save this elderly lady that was struck. And, I remember that vividly.
That must just blow your mind the first time you see it. I think you expect, you expect the bell, you expect get all your gear on, get in the truck as fast as you can, not that to be your first call.
That was the very first call. I mean, I was still going through orientation for that day. I didn't have equipment. I had a pair of coveralls that they gave me. I didn't have boots. I didn't have anything. I just had a pair of runners that I walked in the fire station with, and a pair of coveralls that they put me in, and so, but unfortunately that individual did not make it, but it was a real immediate impact on my soul and the work that these individuals do, and the things that they may be called upon to do. So, but
I think that's a common misconception. People just think fire service, firefighter, that's all you're doing.
No, far from it.
Yeah.
Like if you had a typical fire, like a fire officer here, they would go through all the things that they do, from medical to hazmat to river to, trapped individuals in vaults, or like it's basically anything that the other services don't do because of equipment or manpower, we get called on to do. And it can change daily, and it often does change daily, but the general firefighting, that's what those guys do. It is true, but they do a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so over the years, you said you progressed to this where you are now. So what made you get into the investigation, inspecting side of it?
Well, from 1990, my start, to 1999, I worked as a firefighter, getting close to and promoting to a senior firefighter. Then I was injured in the line of duty. I was doing a motor vehicle accident on the highway by 7 persons, and one of the tools that we used to extricate people from vehicles, what we used to call like the jaws of life.
Yeah.
It was the same tool, just a different device on it. It was a cutting tool, and then I hooked up what we call a hydraulic ram, because the dash collapsed on to the individual, and I needed to push the dash away. Unfortunately, the tool failed, not the tool, but the hydraulic line, and the hydraulic oil shot out under pressure, about 12,000 psi, and somehow made it under my mask and my helmet and everything.
Oh, wow.
And hit me in the eye, and ended up causing a lot of damage to where I needed numerous surgeries to fix. And as a result of that, I ended up becoming blind in my left eye. And through WCB and the legislation, I was reclassified into a different position.
Mm-hmm.
And that was within the fire prevention branch at that time. And I started a career path towards becoming an inspector and investigator in the fire prevention branch.
Was there ever a part of you who just thought, okay, I guess I'm done? Or is it just the passion for the job and wanting to do it just made you want to keep going?
There was definitely a little bit of concern back then.
Yeah. You never know, right?
Well, yeah. And so duty to accommodate is legislative. So I knew I was going to have something. Now, that duty to accommodate doesn't necessarily mean it has to be within the fire hall.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time when other positions within the city were being looked at. But WCB became my friend a little bit, and they basically said to the city and that they need to find gainful, because it's gainful employment and meaningful employment. And this is a discussion that the city managers, our department managers, and WCB had, and they found that I could be moved into the fire prevention branch, and that would be considered gainful and meaningful employment, and that's what was offered to me.
Oh, yeah, and we spoke a little bit before we started, some of the in-depth training you've gotten.
Yeah. Well, after a point in time when I got moved into this branch, and I was fortunate because of the injury. I was given a lot of opportunities to train, right? And I was afforded some really good opportunities, and I found myself going down to the States, to the United States Fire Academy, which is part of Homeland Security FEMA School. I took some training in investigations down there. I met some people, some very insightful people that got me into some other training. I found myself training with certain members of the ATF, became friends, and it kind of just snowballed. And as a result of that, and that friendship I created with these individuals, I was afforded some really good training opportunities, and I was lucky enough really to be able to train under some really, really quality fire investigator explosion investigators with the ATF. I was given some opportunities that very few people in Canada have, or even have credentialing because of.
And now, is it your job now? Like, do you still go on site to investigate fires, or do you find yourself more of a teaching role?
Both, right? As fire marshal and I guess the lead chief investigator, I still take an active role just because we're required to in the city as per our contract. And there's 4 investigators, myself included, and we each take a week of on-call per month. And and so I'm doing the same amount of investigations as my investigators do, which I like because I really do like the investigation side. But do I teach? Yes, we can get into that here in a sec. But I also, as a mentoring, I try and mentor my guys. As their boss, I review all their files. I sign them off. So I'm always part of their investigation, whether I'm on scene with them or not, because I have to review and sign off. But in terms of teaching, I do teach. I teach quite a bit. I'm part of what's called FIA, which is the Fire Investigators Association of Alberta. It's an organization dedicated to teaching and training investigators in the province. I'm past president of that organization and still a current board member. And we do about 2, possibly 3 major training events throughout the calendar year. And we have membership from all over Alberta, BC, and Saskatchewan that will come to these training.
Like what kind of type of training or credentials goes into investigating?
Well, in Alberta, we operate a little bit different. The same training and credentialing is the same across Canada as it is in North America. You need to have your NFPA 1033 standard for investigations and 1031 for inspections. All my guys, are inspectors, investigators. But in Alberta, we're a little bit different. We have the Alberta Safety Code Act and council. And because of that, there's a little more training that we have to do to meet those standards as well. But basically, we all meet the same standards with the NFPA. So that's the minimums. Our city, through conversations over the years, our city has adopted, because we need continuing education, right, to maintain certifications. And our city has been supportive and has allowed our guys to get extra training through NAFI, which is the National Association of Fire Investigators, and through IAAI, which is the International Association of Arson Investigators. The IAAI is a harder certifications, a little more work and involvement into maintaining and getting to those certifications. But our city has supported us in those, and it's a benefit to us, and it's a credit to them for doing it because it comes with a price tag. But they're very supportive on that. So all my guys are working through the process of getting those certifications. Now they're at varying degrees because they started at different times. But that's what they're doing. And what that shows is that there's continuing education. It's not like, we wrote a test 20 years ago and we haven't looked at it. That's not the case at all. We're continually training and continually meeting standards because codes and standards change. Court rulings change. How we investigate change. The science behind the investigations has changed. Years ago when I started, they used to look at crazing on glass as a possible indicator that an ignitable liquid was used. Has nothing. That's junk science. Now we know that, right? So things change. So the need to stay abreast of our training and the code changes and courtroom changes, like legal, precedents in the court, those all, we learn that all through continuing education. And especially now, if my guys are ever called to give testimony on court. I've been qualified as an expert in court in both Court of Kings and Provincial Court, right, as an expert witness.
Oh.
And so, but that goes back to my training, right? Because some of those NFPA documents, if I'm being, let's say the Crown wants to declare me on this particular court as an expert again, right? And just because I did it once doesn't mean I'm going to get it again. You have to go through the process. So it should become a little bit easier the more you do it, but I may have a defense that's trying to, refute that. He doesn't want me to be qualified because then I can give opinion testimony as well. So he's going to challenge me, and he's going to bring documents up, and he's going to bring, like the Dauber Challenge, which is an American that kind of made its way up here through Regina versus Moen and Regina versus LJL, which are different court rulings. But so you have to be cognizant of that, and being able to show that I've continually trained, I've continued with my skill sets, and those all blend into being deemed and qualified as an expert, right? So that's why it's important. Certifications are really the cornerstone of the investigation. It's pretty much, it's not like you see on TV, it's not CSI type stuff, but there is a lot of science to it and understanding different aspects of a fire, right? Because we need to understand, fire growth, the potential. We need to understand thermodynamics, right? And thermometry and, fire behaviors and how things go and how things are influenced by the geometry of a room or a structure and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it.
So is it like a lot of book learning, or is there hands-on training as well? Like in my head, am I picturing somebody's setting up a scene and you have to figure out?
Let's pause for a moment so we can share some exciting news. We're proud to announce that our work here at Bring Back the Porch is getting noticed. From October to the end of January, our videos and reels viewed more than 1 million times. Some of those viewers could be your customers, so sponsoring Bring Back the Porch is a great way to get your message in front of them too. If you'd like to support our work here at Bring Back the Porch, we ask you to go to our website at bringbacktheporch.com and follow the links. Thank you for your support.
Initially, your investigations are they're both. There's the theory portion, and then there's the actual, they'll recreate a burn, like they'll create a burn cell, and they'll set it, and then they know how it was done and where it was set, and then you watch and train the investigators to go through and see if they can narrow down to the area of origin, and then to the point of origin, right? And that kind of stuff. So you're following their methodologies and how their pattern recognition and understanding fire behavior and just patterns. Like fire patterns actually really are two different things. They're either moving or their intensity. And being able to understand those will help you then identify fire effects, right? And then you just kind of build from there. But once you start getting a little bit more advanced, it becomes, unfortunately, a little bit more book work, and you become more of a book geek, right? But because especially when you get into thermodynamics and thermometry, they're being able to understand, formulas and how to calculate, Boyle's law and Ohm's law and all these different types of things. They help you with your investigation and determining different coefficients and different things, right, that will assist you in the ultimate goal of understanding where the fire started and what events came together.
And where do you take the training?
Well, again, we have a Fire Investigators Association of Alberta, which is FIA. We classify as FIA. It is Chapter 38 of the International Association of Arson Investigators. Now, that's a board that does a lot of training throughout the province. 2 to 3 times a year, they will put on different courses, bring in experts, and from people from all over Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, even the Yukon. And we actually, our last training, we had a couple Americans come up as well. And they can go and get that training. They get certification through the International Association of Arson Investigators, and because we're a chapter of it. And it's a really good organization. I spent 20 years on that board. I was past president. I still teach quite a bit for that, as well as others. And that's one place they can go with it. Other places, every year the International has a training convention, like an annual conference. They call it the International Training Conference. And that typically varies in different locations, predominantly in the United States, unfortunately. But that is our governing body in terms of certifications. So, and like I said earlier, our city and my management team have been very supportive, and they understand the need for us to maintain certifications and continually train. Now, we don't get to go all the time, right, like that. We have to be mindful of dollars and this kind of stuff, but we do maintain certification.
When you walk in, what do you look for?
Well, there's a couple things.
Or is that too broad?
It is, but it isn't, right? Like, because some people will look at a big fire scene and go, oh my God, how do you ever do an investigation on that size of a building? Fire reacts and behaves usually very similar, and it starts small, it grows, and seeks certain things. It needs fuel, it needs oxygen, and it needs the heat to sustain the combustion process. So from that perspective, it reacts in the same. Now, building features, design, how we, in a residential, how we furnish that building, what's the building materials, right, for the building. All those can play and often do impact how a fire grows and progress. In all reality, how firefighters attack a fire can impact on what evidence is left for the investigator to look at and try and make a determination about. So there's a lot of things. But when we come up to a scene, typically, what we're normally doing when we first come up is we're looking at the overall scene. Are there people in the crowd? It's that kind of stuff. Like, you want to take mental notes of, maybe the way the wind is blowing, this kind of stuff, because it can all impact patterns.
So it's not even like a day later.
We're lucky. We're lucky in our city because we have on-call investigators. Not every city has, but we have on-call investigators. And our platoons that go out to suppress the fires, our firefighters, they know that we're there, and there's a whole lot they got to do and be responsible for. But for the most part, they call us in pretty quick. So often we will get there while they're still on. Well, they always are on scene, but they're still engaged, maybe firefighting or controlling some hot spots and that kind of stuff. So we're there. We get a really good breakdown from them on what their observations were and what actions they took, because that can dictate patterns and things that we look for in determination. So, but we're looking at all those kind of things. And then when we do the investigation, we follow a scientific methodology, and we do a systematic approach on how we do an investigation. And some of the reasons we do that is we're ensuring that when we do an investigation, we're doing the same approach all the time. So if you're ever in court testifying and you get asked that question, you can say that, yeah, I'm consistent in my how I investigate a fire, how I approach the fire, how I document the fire, how I photograph the fire, and how I, do all that kind of stuff, right? Because those things might come into question, especially in court.
So is it, can you tell if it's arson?
Well, you always want to be really careful, right? It's easy to come in and make a preconceived notion on something.
You can. It's a big blame game.
You can, and there's two different perspectives of it, being a public fire investigator and a private fire investigators. Working for, like the city of Medicine, we're public. We're not worried about subrogation or, trying to put a company on notice if there's blame. We're worried about what events came together to create the situation that caused the fire. So we're looking for origin and causation of the fire. So it's a little bit different in that perspective, but at the end of the day, you're still trying to determine that. But when you come in, there are often times where a fire could have suspicious undertones, but you want to be really careful on that, right? Because you don't want to go in with a preconceived notion because it can
impartial.
Correct. You got to be very careful on creating confirmation bias, right, or something to that where, if I think it's this electrical plug here, and I can steer my investigation to prove and show evidence to support that, but that's not doing a good investigation, right? You want to try and build up a series of, hypotheses as to what could have happened. And then you go through the process of not trying to determine and, if that is, you go through the process of trying to disprove it, right, and see what's left. So one of the...
You don't want to prove your own theory.
No, you want to see what's left and what's still standing. So one of the best examples of what people ask me about that, like how do you try and find the needle in the haystack? I said, I don't look for the needle, I remove the hay. And then I see what's left, right? And that is a good investigation approach, right? You're doing due diligence on it. You're building up your process. And the part of the scientific method is, identifying the need, inducing different hypotheses, going through the process of trying to, dismiss them, deduce them, and then at the end of the day, seeing what's left. And if it can be your final conclusion, great. And if it can't, because let's say you have a couple that are still remaining, that fire then sits like as an undetermined causation, right? Not all the time can you figure out exactly what events came together to create that scenario. Because that's the one thing about investigating a fire, especially a complete loss or even a motor vehicle, which, if it's out in the field and, you might think, well, it's out in the field, maybe somebody stole it and burnt it up, insurance, whatever, right? But you have to prove it. Like knowing something and proving something are very different, right? So
and then trying to be impartial in the process of doing it.
And we're very careful. We don't ever classify arson. Arson is a criminal act. We call it incendiary. Now, the definitions are basically the same. But the difference, like people go, what's the difference? Well, we're not police officers. We don't have arresting powers. And arson pretty much is putting a person to an event, right? So we don't give that analogy. We call it incendiary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your years of experience, are there any anything you can tell people? Like, what are the most common types that you see? A preventable fire, I guess. Safety-wise, I guess.
I think from that perspective, probably our biggest ones are still kitchen fires, right? Like, like we have a lot of those. However, last year wasn't our biggest cause of fire, but preventable ones, those, right? Even careless discarding of smoker's material. Like every year we'll have like the carelessly discarded smokers material or just cigarette butts that are butted out in dried out like peat moss type, like peat soil, like in an outdoor pot that's dry. It's maybe sat there all winter and somebody's on deck and believe it or not, we have those type of fires, right? So those are some of the things that are preventable. I mean, just proper steps to ensure, like, especially in the kitchen, like, don't leave unattended cooking, right? Like, I had a dryer fire not that long ago, and then the night before I had it was 2 nights before, pardon me, a kitchen fire where the lady, a younger lady, was cooking on the stove, and then she was running, like doing like multitasking, just doing some housework and cleaning. And she said she just went downstairs for a couple minutes and probably a little longer then, but she's doing some stuff and all of a sudden she hears the fire alarm. So she comes upstairs and now she's got a grease fire, like a pot on the stove type thing. It was a frying pan, pardon me. and now her kitchen cabinets are involved too, right? So she did smother it, and she did turn off the stove, and so she did everything right, except she was unattended cooking.
Yeah.
Right? So, but those little simple things, can turn into big things, and just simple actions like that can have consequences, right? Mm-hmm. So, and like I said, careless discarding of smoker's material. I can't believe how many fires we have that way.
Yeah.
But last year, our biggest causation of fires was arson last year.
Oh, wow.
It was determined incendiary arson, right?
Jeez.
Unfortunately, we do have a whole lot of issues with, and the city's working hard, but we still have some issues with homelessness and encampments.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of outdoor fires, and which has a lot of people in this community concerned and that kind of stuff, right? But that is something that in the last year that kind of overpaced some of our more common ones, such as the kitchen fires.
And do you, like you said, we have on-call investigators?
We do. We have a person on call 24/7.
Mm-hmm. So
right?
do you work a regular shift work like everybody else?
Correct.
You do?
We all work straight days, but then we're on call through that day and through that evening for a week, and then the rotation changes, and it'll go to another investigator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I appreciate your time. It was actually really fascinating. And I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
the work that you do here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thanks for coming to the porch.
Not a problem.
Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.